So good evening and good morning. Let's begin the Friday study circle, wherein these days we are reading the passages from the Sunlit path, which have words from the mother. And the mother herself said not to take her words as mere words, but as forces in action. So as I begin, I aspire and I pray that may I be able to receive what I need to receive from these forces of action so that I can change my ways and move towards the higher, the simpler, the more expansive, life or anything that I am aspiring towards. And if I don't have anything that I'm aspiring towards, may I have an aspiration for that growth and for progress. So invoking the Mother and Sri Aurobindo's grace and presence as we begin. Thank you. So last week we had started a new section, receptivity and aspiration, and we had started this passage, the universal vital force. We had not taken it up fully, but we had read it fully. So maybe we can just read it again and then we'll see whatever needs further, and we'll take that. So if anybody has the capacity to unmute and read, they can do it. Otherwise, I'll do that. The universal vital forces. Okay. So I'll read.
I'll read.
Okay, thank you.
A sweet mother, how can one draw on the universal vital force? One can do it in many ways. First of all, you must know that it exists and that one can enter into contact with it. Secondly, one must try to make this contact to feel it circulating everywhere, through everything, in all persons and all circumstances. To have this experience, for example, when you are in the countryside among trees, to see it circulating in the whole of nature, in
Apologies. Is it back? It moved.
it's back, yeah.
Okay.
To see it circulating in the whole of nature, in trees and things, and then commune with it. Feel yourself close to it, and each time you want to deal with it, recall that impression you had and try to enter into contact. Some people discover that with certain movements, certain gestures, certain activities, they enter into contact more closely. I knew people who gesticulated while walking. This truly gave them the impression that they were in contact. Certain gestures they made while walking. But children do this spontaneously. When they give themselves completely in their games, running, playing, jumping, shouting, when they spend all their energies like that, they give themselves entirely. And in the joy of playing and moving and running, they put themselves in contact with this universal vital force. They don't know it, but they spend their vital force in a contact with a universal vital force, and that is why they can run without really feeling very tired, except after a very long time. I knew young people who had always lived in cities. In a city and in those little rooms one has in the big cities in which everyone is huddled. Now, they had come to spend their holidays in the countryside, in the south of France, and there the sun is hot. When they walked around the countryside the first few days, they really began to get a terrible headache and to feel absolutely uneasy because of the sun. But they suddenly thought, why? If we make friends with the sun, it won't harm us anymore. And they began to make a kind of inner effort of friendship and trust in the sun. And when they were out in the sun, instead of trying to bend double and tell themselves, oh, how hot it is, how it burns, they said, oh, how full of force and joy and love the sun is, etc. They opened themselves like this. And not only did they not suffer any longer, but felt so strong afterwards that they went round telling everyone who said it is hot, telling them, do as we do, you will see how good it is. And they could remain for hours in the full sun, bareheaded and without feeling any discomfort. It is the same principle. It is the same principle. They link themselves to the universal vital force which is in the sun and receive this force which took away all that was unpleasant to them. When one is in the countryside, one walks under the trees and feels so close to nature, to the trees, the sky, all the leaves, all the branches, all the herbs, when one feels a great friendship with these things and breathes that air which is so good, perfumed with all the plants, then one opens oneself, and by opening oneself, communes with the universal forces, and for all things, it is like that.
Yes, thank you, Meera. That was a long passage. So, as we had discussed last time, for those of us who were present, the section is receptivity and aspiration. So, am I open to receiving? And what am I aspiring for? What? So, because that is what I will move towards. So, we discussed how, firstly, to know that this force exists is the first step. And once you know that this force exists, you can come into contact with it. And secondly, you must try to make this contact to feel it circulating everywhere, to everything in all persons and all circumstances. I think the beginning of this, we feel, say, the first time we might have done any guided meditation, in which they say, okay, sit and then feel a white light radiating through you, something like this. Like it's funny also, but for us to make us feel what is always there. It's a revelation, it's a revelation. And of course, that's not where we stop. We have to go further. But just that when I'm open to it, when I know it exists, I give it more power. And suddenly it's like as if I am, helping it. I'm associating with it and it exists. And I have the power that I've always had, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't sense it. And the same thing happens with every breath, right? Like any breath that I take with consciousness, that I take in awareness, does something to me. Like, with relaxation or energizing. So that's the power of knowing what exists and making it come into us, to live in us, to be more powerful within us. And that's what I think they say, right? That collaborate, collaborate. This is the collaboration which starts with awareness. Yeah, so we had already discussed that. And
I have something, it's more of a practical thing. So often nowadays we hear, especially like after the air quality index in Delhi had dropped quite a bit, right? Because we hear even I think it's all Indian cities for that matter, that the air is so polluted, and it's like it's a cycle, right? So you have to live here and you are in the hustle bustle, you are breathing this air, and eventually it's like, this, you'll develop this lung issue, that lung issue, and it's like a constant, like a formation in the mind. Not me, I'm saying I hear people say this, and something has never felt right, because it is what it is. It's a fact, but we don't have to accept it, right? Because if we have to live in this environment, there should be a way out. It's not all of us are not condemned to get the same illness. There should be a different way of dealing with the same issue, and not willing to accept that, if you are in this city, you are eating the fruits and vegetables grown out of fertilizers, you are breathing the air full of pollution, certain diseases or certain things you must attract. So I think uh, I was dealing with that question, and this passage gave me that opening, that it is, you can always connect, or you can make yourself connect to something truer in the universal force, more truer than the forms that they represent. So I think for me it is that change that can happen, so I can deal with the environment better and overall make it more lighter on my body.
Yes, thank you, Meera, for sharing. It I don't know, amazes me, and I don't know to laugh or cry. But a lot of times we do things thinking that this is the best I'm doing, right? And the way it comes back to bite us, like I just find it amazing. For example, like I have a child. I think most of us know. He's 9 right now, and he develops allergies easily. So he has to be on puffers and everything. So when he was born, after some time, the whole pollution thing kind of escalated in India. And my partner, he is very protective in that way. So he got, I don't know, 5 or 6 air purifiers, and our whole house was like, I don't know, a bubble with ultra pure air. And even at the slightest spike of that air pollution, he would not send him to school. And he would be the only child not going to school because he didn't want him to be exposed to that level. And that sounds right? He was like that, what will he do? If he's hurting himself, I would rather have him at home. And all the purifiers he would be controlling from Wi-Fi. So even if he's in office and I'm trying to make it down, it would kind of increase. So as in that was towards the best what I can do for my child, right? Like from him, that was the intention. And now, because of that overprotection, I mean, we don't really know what the reason is, but like at the slightest thing, the child develops allergies because he's not used to dust, he's not used to pollen, he's not used to pollution, for example. So, as in, to see that how limited my mind or reasoning capability is, and with that, I am leading my life. तो बार बार ऐसे लगता है कि अरे फिर से रख दो this statement that I have made, that statement. And obviously we don't know why what is happening. This is just again my own deliberation, right? Like this is why it could be happening and whatever. But so many times I have seen this, I have done something for the betterment, and yet what it ended up doing was something else. So again, these, how you started that logically, this is where we are all heading. So just to see that there's so much above this logic of mine, and how limited this logic is, because obviously if I am thinking something and I am limited, how can my logic be unlimited? Like how can it be the all encompassing holier than thou, which I think it is, that मेरा thought है, मेरा opinion है, मेरी knowledge है, मेरी understanding है. It's so beautiful. Yesterday night, again, because he wasn't well, I was up for quite some time, and I stumbled upon a passage by the mother, and she was discussing something about how she had a dream, like in a dreamlike state. She was crossing, she wanted to cross some water, like she wanted to go from one point to the other. And usually she said that there are some entities that help her, like there's a big brother entity and stuff. She explained it nicely. And she said that that entity was coming forward, that let me help you, let me help you. But the moment it would come forward, mother would even, kind of go down further. So she stopped him that no, I don't need your help. All I need to do is I just need to have this thing. Ki I want to go there, and somehow the water was carrying her. So then she said that that entity is like, is the knowledge that we have, for example. So the knowledge is there to protect us, to guide us, to lead us. But at times we have to realize that this is not where it can help us. And we have to say that you stop here. So I thought the analogy was quite interesting. And we see that happening, that, how again, reason is the helper, reason is the bar. We see that, and it's hard because we have to stand against our own self, right? And say that, no, no, I've seen you take me down the dump so many times, so let me be skeptical of you. And that's, I don't know, difficult and funny, and yet quite entertaining also if I allow myself to go there. Yeah, inviting, of course, more reflections on any of this or anything else. So we are taking up the passage on vital forces. That's the context.
I think what just listening to what we are saying, my feeling is like, I mean, both things are active, right? I think in the case of the pollution, I mean, there I feel the mind plays such a big part because, as was said, you are creating that formation. Oh, this is going to happen to me also, right? And that, also becomes a living force. So, I mean, Mother has talked so much about fear, right? So I think that is definitely to be avoided. But I mean, I do feel there is a place for reason. I mean, I don't think one can discard it, is my opinion. So I think, Taru, it is like you're saying. I think one may need certain, you know, precaution at some time. But I think my feeling is like, because the physical is still, quite resistant, right? I mean, we see that in our own, at least I have seen it also. It is, I mean, to open to the mother in the physical is not easy. I mean, that is very hard. So, you can have the aspiration, but then still the body is like that so much, I think so many times we say it has just come from matter. So, so I think sometimes, I mean, these medicines and all can be an aid. I think, but what does not need to be inculcated is this element of fear, to make somebody, especially like a child, think that no, you're weak or whatever, right? No, that's not good. That I think is not, but okay, I mean, to some extent, if medicine can help, then that is good. It gives the body some faith.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for pointing that out. Like, mother herself has said that let, reason be the master of the house. Till, of course, you connect with the psychic. So what I just wanted to say, but maybe I didn't say it right, was that I have started doubting my reasoning. Earlier, if I believed in something or I thought something, I would stand by it, like come what may, that this is right. But now, after seeing so much, that how my reasoning or the reasoning of the person in front of me, how it's coming from the right center, right? I'm trying to do what's the best, and yet how it's not the best, that time has told me again and again and again. So, how there's I don't know what word to use, but again, in that too, there is some discretion, there is this room for error, there is this suppleness that, yes, right now, where I am, this seems to be the best thing. And yet, offering it, or, like kind of holding it lightly, that मेरा कुछ पता नहीं है, so Jo ho ho, but this is what I think, or this is what I'm aspiring, and may the best happen. So just holding it with openness, I guess, is what I had wanted to say. Yeah.
I also feel that some of the times we say, um, when we say, when we talk about reason, it's not really the reason. Like in my case, I can only speak that it's actually ego's, my ego's cry for being right all the time. Because I remember when you gave example, sometimes that we really put our best and do things with good intentions, and sometimes they really backfire, and sometimes you wonder that why did it happen? And I think I shared it before, but like I remember I organized a conference here, and it was really a big conference. I got an opportunity. I was really happy, and in my hearts of hearts, every day I used to get up and I used to say, okay, now I know I'm going to really learn a lot of skills, and I'm really doing it for a good cause. And invited speakers from all over the world, this, and it failed miserably. People didn't invite on time, things didn't work, tech failed. Like it was like a complete disaster. Not one, but everything failed. And I remember I was so upset. I was so upset at the mother because, I kept saying her name all the time. I remembered. So I did everything right. You know how we here keep offering, do it for good intentions. And still it failed. And I remember my supervisor was not happy with me. And I got so hurt. And I remember after a few days, I think a couple of months later, I don't know where I read, but it was about, I think in Gita only somewhere this I read that how to paraphrase, but it was about that even if I'm remembering the Lord, if my actions are still coming from me, that I am doing it. So it's not that not that we do not even have to let go of the fruits of the action, but we also have to completely renounce me as a doer if we want to say that this is the highest, right? So, and that was such a big revelation because then I understood why she did that, what happened. Because, in everything I did, it was, a lot with reason, and, I was very centered, but it was I am doing it, my conference, I have got the opportunity. In everything was I remember many people told me that, okay, I can help you. You're doing a lot. Maybe take a rest. You're really exhausted from last week. I would say, no, no, I will do it just because maybe I wanted to show it that how great am I. But that time I didn't realize it and I couldn't understand because my reasoning was saying, I did everything picture perfect, it failed. But because there was so much of I, so I think even what you gave about your son, even though your partners or even sometimes our aspiration is best for the child, but it is my child. This me is always there. So for me, I feel that that's not reason really. Like in my conferences thing, and now I realize that it's a lot that sentimentality of, or the drama that the ego always likes of being liked and appreciated and this. So I think that reason has to be really purified to be even called as reason because most of the time it's not actually reason or where we stand. At least I stand. So it's like that.
Yes, thank you. So it is reason, but coming from not the right center, not from the highest center, but probably from the ego center of the doing me, the doer me. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. I know I've shared this before. I'm having some kind of deja vu, but just to your story, there was another thing that I had read. I think I might have shared it when you had shared this before, and I apologize for that. That there was this art of living story, about somebody who had written a story about Sri Ravi Shankar. He was a senior sadhak in art of living. So he had shared that once Sri had to come to America, and how there was a conference about spiritual leaders, and he wasn't included. So this person he made so much effort to get Sri Sri a slot in those speakers so that, he also has that international presence and everybody knows him. It was at the time when he was not that popular internationally. So he did it, and it was like, he turned mountains kind of to make it happen. And then Sri Sri was called, everything was arranged. And then when Sri Sri was about to arrive, supposed to arrive for that conference, he didn't come. Like he refused to leave his hotel room, something like this. And that person just like lost it. Like it was like that, how is this possible that I've been working for it exactly, Nandini, how you were sharing that this is what I had worked for, and with everything surrendered and everything. And like, the way he said that, the ridicule, the surprise, the shock of ye ho kaise sakta hai, like hit him so hard, so hard, so hard. And he was so angry when he started driving towards that, hotel, because it was so insulting for him, right? That the person didn't turn up. And when he entered the room and he saw Sri just sitting at him and smiling, everything just melted. And he said that that wasn't for them. This is something I had to do for you. And he said that the way it grounded me, like nothing else could have. So whatever, the divine does or a master does, if we can know that this is to, I don't know, polish me, to make me less so that I can be light, is such a big blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, that we're reading, I think that the psychic, the book, I think that I was thinking that exercise, where is this coming from? Good practice, actually. Um, is this coming from your, sense of you, or is it coming, the ego, vital? Is it coming from the mind? That is a good, often, I think, as was said, we see it's really coming from the sense of the vital, this desire, that is so beautiful. But, just on the one thing, I think, Nandini, what you said is we had this in our satsang here also, that and somebody was saying something similar. And then, somebody said something very beautiful. See, the fact that you are being made to realize is also Mother's grace. I mean, that is her grace. And then, I mean, that you said that, you just realized, so that you realize, no, she made you realize, right? I mean, she is, that is the beauty, right? And even this thing that we think, oh, I had this, I became, no, 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 even that opening is she's doing it. And then we see like what, I mean, and we all get into this ego thing. Oh, I'm this, I've done this much. I can meditate for so long. But, it's just the little opening, the little, aspiration when she's giving us. But yes, I think in the measure, I think, that we are open, she gives more.
Taru, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, this is the last paragraph. I think we'll just take that and then we can go to the next one if there is no comment. Is when one is in the countryside, when one walks under the trees and feels so close to nature, to the trees, the sky, all the leaves, all the branches, all the herbs, when one feels a great friendship with these things, and breathes that air, which is so good, perfume with all the plants. Then one opens oneself, and by opening oneself, communes with the universal forces. And for all things, it is like that. I really resonated with this, that a lot of times we feel, if I'm reading this, it feels that okay, it's about nature, let me go there and do it, right? But for all things it's like this, that anytime I am, like, say, I don't know, upset or lashing or angry or I don't know, complaining. There's something that has moved from my side. There's a connection that is missing from my side. My head is not bowed anymore. It's standing high. And that is why things shift or hurt or I hurt. And yet, if I'm open to receiving, if I'm open to the grace, this by opening oneself, one communes with the universal forces and one is connected, and for all things, it's like that. Yeah. So, is there anything anybody would want to say on this whole passage, or should we proceed to the next one? So the next one is also very similar, like not very similar, but on the same, of course, topic, receptivity to the universal vital forces. It's a small one, so we can take it. So if anybody has a capacity to read, they can please read this for us. Yeah, so I will read.
I can read that.
Okay, thank you.
Sweet Mother, do the universal vital forces have any limits? I don't think that forces have a limit because, in comparison with us, they are certainly unlimited. But it's our capacity of reception that is limited. We cannot absorb them beyond a certain measure. And then we must keep a balance between the expenditure and the capacity to receive. If one spends suddenly in a kind of impulse, for example, in an impulsive movement, if one spends more than one has received, one needs a brief moment of concentration, calm, receptivity to absorb universal forces. You must put yourself in a certain condition to receive them, and then they last for a certain time. And once you have spent them, you must begin again to receive them. It is in this sense that there are limits. It isn't the forces that are limited, it is the receptivity. You want me to finish the other? How can we increase the receptivity? By progressing. One must first know how to open himself and then, in a great quietude, know how to assimilate the forces one has received, not to throw them out again. One must know how to assimilate them. So the progress lies in a normal but progressive equilibrium, periods of assimilation, reception, assimilation, and periods of expenditure, and knowing how to balance the two and alternate them in a rhythm which is your personal one. You must not go beyond your capacity. You must not remain below it, because the universal vital forces are not something which you could put into a strong box. They must circulate. So you must know how to receive and at the same time to spend. But to increase the capacity of reception, so as to have more and more of the things which are to be used up to be spent.
Thank you. So the first passage, again, this is the summary that, of course, the grace, is unlimited, but my capacity to receive it is less, is limited for anything, right? And that is why we see that, say, if we are reading a line or if we have a question and we don't have the answer, and if we revisit it by chance or by practice, that, okay, I'll come back to it, suddenly it makes sense. So something in me, the receptivity or the dawning increases with practice, with prayer, with grace. So just this acknowledgement, right, that a lot of times I might feel alone, I might feel helpless, I might feel, oh, I can't do it, or it's beyond me, or I don't have help. So just knowing, how mother says that I never turn from you, it's you, who turn their back or who forget that I am here. There was this anecdote I just remembered from those books, that there's this series that how we came to Mother and Sri Aurobindo. So in one of those, there was this thing that there was a family who had moved with children to Pondicherry, and the husband was working somewhere, but the wife and 2, 3 kids were with them. So the wife fell like really sick. So the people, from the ashram, they telegrammed the husband that, okay, she's sick, come. And mother got like angry and she was like that, am I not here? Like, why would you feel the need to call him and disturb him? Everything is fine. Tell him not to come. You're forgetting I'm here. So just this, that we just assume, right, that okay, for this I need this, for that I need that. I forget the hand that's holding me, that's on which I'm standing. So it's a good, I don't know, reminder for me. And yeah. Yeah, so mother says that I don't think that forces have a limit because in comparison with us, they are certainly unlimited. But it's our capacity of reception that is limited. So that is why, we are asked to be more sincere. We have asked to do things like, on a regular basis to increase this capacity of reception. I think that's all where it hits, among other things. And we have seen it, like I have seen it, that I cannot absorb things beyond a certain measure. And then we must keep a balance between the expenditure and the capacity to receive. So if one spends suddenly in a kind of impulse, if one spends much more than one has received, one needs a brief moment of concentration, calm, receptivity to absorb universal forces. But if I don't even know that this is where I am absorbing and I spend, I get lost. I feel what is happening to me, the vital revolts, and it's like whole army inside me stands up. But if I know where to go and charge my batteries, where to go and connect again, all one needs is a brief moment of concentration, calm, receptivity to absorb universal forces. So you must put yourself in a certain condition to receive them, and then they last for a certain time. And once you have spent them, you must begin again to receive them. It is in this sense that there are limits. There are limits, but it isn't the forces that are limited. It is the receptivity, my receptivity. Yeah. Just like, say, when one is, of course, doing bodybuilding or anything, how we increase the weight I can carry, and that takes so much effort, so much training. When we sit down for meditation, initially, like how the body revolts, like a lot of people have nauseas and, I don't know, vomitings and stuff. I remember my first Art of Silence course and all, with 4 days of silence, how the first day the body was reacting. And then it becomes the norm. So we have seen this, is all I'm just trying to say, that I've seen that how the limits can be and must be expanded. But again, with, you know, not in a very defiant way, but in a more humble way, as in with, again, yeah. So, anything on this receptivity to the universal vital forces?
I don't know if it. Yeah, I think it should be better.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if it's applicable here, but something on receptivity just came to my mind. Something I remember I did a course here on Buddhism. Is it still? Can you hear me twice? Yeah. So and when the course finished, I asked the mentor, quite senior mentor, and I asked him that and the course also spoke about spreading the dharma. So like talking about dharma and being the dharma yourself, that's the best way of spreading, but also sharing it. And I remember I asked him that I feel that um it's not like I don't see the relevance of really revealing the truth or the dharma, because not everyone has that aspiration, right? And I feel really uncomfortable sometimes doing it with people who do not have the same aspiration. And I sometimes even doubt, first of all, even do I know myself the truth to kind of proclaim it. And I remember what he said was really interesting, and I thought I can maybe something with receptivity. And he says that's why, and he knew, my background, with integral education and Hinduism. And he said that's why in Buddhism, we know, like Buddha realized this, that not all of us have that aspiration or the calling. It is the only few who are blessed with it or who have worked enough in the previous lifetime to, to have it. That is why in Buddhism, it is not actually about that, but it's about training your mind, because that everybody can do. So that I really thought was so fascinating. And he says that everybody can do. We could, like, as you said, when you were talking about training, that you did that 4 days and it was uncomfortable and it got comfortable. And I think if anyone of us wants to do it, we've seen people doing it, losing weight or gaining weight and other things. And he says that is very important, that rather than seeing it as that, maybe see it as training your mind or training yourself. And as you train, you become more supple and receptive. So sometimes I've seen, like, people saying that, oh, I don't think so that I have that calling yet. Because I also remember, I read Mother coming from Madan Sri Aurobindo says that in one of, I think, where is it? I'm not sure, where he says that do not take integral yoga if you have not had the calling. Don't take up yoga. You can aspire for it, you can ask for it, but be sure that take only when you have the calling. And I got really confused that how do I know if I have the calling? And in Buddhism, they say hold everyone's hand, everyone is a Buddha. And I thought, I'm not understanding it, especially this happens when you are, looking at everywhere and trying to read different this thing. But that I found so interesting, that you have an aspiration, you don't have an aspiration or a calling, but you can really think about training your mind, and that you anybody can do. And as you do that training, you can become receptive. So I just thought of sharing it. Maybe it's not related to it, but it just came to my mind, that revelation. For me, it was a big thing to know that.
Yes, thank you, Nandini. You know how, mother says that till the time you know what you have to do, till the time that connection has been established, do whatever you can to the best capacity, right? So, as in you keep building that muscle, है ना? मतलब you keep building, you give your best. Everything is, say, to the maximum surrender possible, offered, doing it for the highest, coming from the highest. So at least my attitude is right. Like I am being developed no matter where I am going. I am a good instrument. I am a good instrument. I am a good instrument. So that when it comes the time for them to put me where I need to be, I am a good instrument and I'll be flawless, like for example. So developing that capacity, right, for that receptivity, that performance, that expenditure. And this is also quite interesting, right? Like we mostly focus on receiving, right? Like, okay, what do I receive? What do I receive? And here again, that balance between what I'm receiving and what I'm giving has to be there. Mm. It's just reiterating that this too is very empowering, right? This moment of concentration, calm, receptivity. You know how at times, like when we have, like, say, that exercise of calling peace, that you just sit and call it and it comes. Like we keep forgetting the powers that we have. You know? So I'm assuming there's no other comment on this or reflection. Just taking this last bit. So this is really beautiful that how can we increase the receptivity? The answer is simple, by progressing. So one must first know how to open himself and then in a great quietude know how to assimilate the forces one has received, not to throw them out again. Here by progressing, I would want to share something that really helped me understand something once, that how say if sometimes we feel kind of monotonous, or if we feel, oh, I've heard this so many times, or I feel that, oh, I already know this, like there is no new learning coming for me from the universe, cosmos, or what's happening. So it's like, this analogy once I received, that say if you're climbing a mountain, and you know how when you're climbing a mountain, if you're on a mountain, how maybe with every step or just a few steps, suddenly the scenery changes. Suddenly the scenery changes. Like you're on that side of mountain, you'll see this, you're in this side, and it keeps turning. And as you go up, of course, the magnanimity changes. So if I say that, everything around me appears to be the same, oh, it's monotonous, oh, I've heard this teaching, oh, this does not do anything for me, for example. So what is the problem? The problem is not the surroundings, the problem is not the teaching, the problem is not there's something wrong with the universe, but it's most likely that I am standing at one place and I am not moving. Because if I were to move, it's not a possibility that the scenery doesn't change. So if I feel stuck, I am stuck. So just, it really helped me and I wanted to share that. Yeah. So how can we increase the receptivity? Mother says by progressing. One must first know how to open himself and then, in a great quietude, know how to assimilate the forces one has received, not to throw them out again. One must know how to assimilate them. So the progress lies in a normal but progressive equilibrium period of assimilation, reception, assimilation, and periods of expenditure, and knowing how to balance the two and alternate them in a rhythm which is your personal one. So it's quite rare that we hear the word the personal one, and yet how we have been told we are all different pieces in the same puzzle. So this is something that I have to discover for myself, find a balance for myself. So progress lies in a normal but progressive equilibrium, periods of assimilation, reception, assimilation, and periods of expenditure, and knowing how to balance the two and alternate them in a rhythm which is my personal one. So you must not go beyond your capacity, you must not remain below it, because the universal vital forces are not something which you could put into a storage box. So, one might wonder, like how Nandini was sharing, that how would I know? How would I know? And yet, if we are aware, if we are connected, if we are doing it with love and sincerity, we would know. So not to go beyond the capacity, not to not even be at the capacity that I am capable of. So it's not something that one can put in a storage box. Things must circulate. So you must know how to receive and at the same time to spend. But to increase the capacity of reception so as to have more and more of the things which are to be used up to be spent. So I ask so that I can give. Any comment on this? Any reflection? So I think then we can end here today. So thank you for joining in and just thanking Grace, thanking the Divine, thanking the Mother for this light, for this direction, for this push, for this nudge. And may I have, the grace, the courage to receive what I can from this and make it my own. Thank you.
Thank you, Taru.
Thank you, Dharu.
Thank you, Taru.